Back on Inside Politics, and we want to welcome Tom Humphrey, the longtime dean of the Capitol Hill Press Corps. We have him with us to assess what happened last night, on Thursday night, the August election, and now we turn to the General Assembly. Tom, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it was an interesting night in the General Assembly and an interesting campaign. We had super PACs came to Tennessee, for starters, and they got involved in some races. The Governor Haslam had a PAC that got involved. The upshot was, I think, a mixed bag of the more moderate Republicans and the more conservative Republicans, mixed results. We had a total of 8 incumbents who were defeated in the primaries. 2 Democrats, 5 Republicans.
Particularly on the Senate side, we had, I think, several longtime familiar faces, controversial faces in some cases, who went down. Stacey Camfield over in Knoxville. Now, Stacey Camfield's had opposition almost every time he's run. It looks like people say, oh, he's in trouble. He never has been until now. This time he got beat by nearly 3-1. What happened?
It was a trouncing. I was a little surprised by that. I think that was the turnout in the precincts that include Senate District 7 was about twice what it was in the rest of Knox County. The challenger to Senator Camfield, Richard Briggs, a heart surgeon who is also a Knox County commissioner, was fairly well known, very much supported, spent his own money in the race fairly readily, and just carpet bombed Stacey Camfield with critical direct mail advertising and some TV. That paid off.
Ophelia Ford, from down in the Ford family in Memphis, Senator Ford also went down, and she again was defeated. She finished 3rd in a 4-person field. Now, she'd been sick during recent sessions. Did that play a role in this, or was something else going on?
I think sickness in and of itself did not play a role. She did miss a good bit of the legislative session this year, and that was pointed out by the newspapers and media over there generally. And Senator Ford actually came across as somewhat arrogant. She did not respond to that, and they had a popular county city councilman, Lee Harris, who raised a well-funded, good campaign. He won. It may be the end of the Ford dynasty in Memphis, which goes back about 3 decades.
Well, I was going to ask you that question. I think this will be the first General Assembly we've had in a while where somebody named Ford was not either in the House or the Senate.
And that is correct. Going back 30 years. That Senate seat, District 29, had been held by someone in the Ford family for 30 years.
Another first-term Republican who is not going to make it back is Jim Somerville. He finished, he finished well down in his race behind 2 people who I believe had been in the General Assembly before. Did he just have too tough a re-election field to try to get back?
Which race was that?
The Jim Somerville race.
Somerville, yes, he had too tough a race. He was considered somewhat of an accidental senator anyway, as you may recall. He was a Republican on the ballot 4 years ago when Republicans swept everything. His Democratic opponent had gone on a fishing trip during the primary, assuming victory. This time we had 2 legislators with legislative experience there running against him. They were well funded, they worked really hard, and Kerry Roberts, who interestingly lost his seat to Republican engineered redistricting, won that seat.
Now, another potential change in the Senate might be what happens with Jim Tracy if he wins his congressional seat, but that's still up in the air at this point. Also, Jim Kyle, who's in the middle of his term, he was not on the ballot, but he was on the ballot in Memphis to win a judicial seat. He will be, assuming, resigning for that. Do you remember this much turnover in the legislature, in the Senate, during the primary season? Then we've had close to 5 members who are going to be leaving.
You're right. That is the most turnover in the state Senate in a primary election that I have seen in many years of keeping track of such things. And there will be some new faces there, and it may change the dynamics.
But given the imbalance in the parties in terms of who has how many seats, and in terms of the way the districts are drawn, the action now in politics in an election year is going to be on the primary level, not in the general election anymore.
Absolutely. The general election is sort of fading into almost inconsequential situations here. There are probably half a dozen seats in the state house where we will have seriously contested general election primaries, and only a couple in the Senate, and those might go Republican.
Now, in terms of the Republican supermajority, that's probably not going to change a whole lot in the fall. In fact, the Republicans might add a seat or two in the Senate and maybe even a few seats in the House. Is that right?
The House is more evenly balanced. I think they could lose a seat or two in the House, the Republicans could, and they could gain a seat or two. There are about a half a dozen competitive House races. I would expect something like the same makeup, which is still a supermajority.
We talked about what happened with these super PACs going into the different races and sort of having inter-party warfare in these primaries. Is this going to have an impact when they come up for session? Are we going to see the Republicans almost dividing themselves up into not just one caucus, but 2 or 3 caucuses this time?
I think that is a legitimate concern for Republicans. That these super PACs, there were active. One of the most interesting was Advance Tennessee, which was founded with, they set it up July 15th, put $150,000 into it like the next day with some establishment donors, people who are friendly with Governor Haslam and Speaker Harwell, and then use that to attack incumbents. And they got like Tony Shipley up in Upper East Tennessee. Mike Sparks was a target here in Middle Tennessee. He survived. And that will create some animosity. You had the Voucher Pact, American Federation for Children.
Tom Humphrey, thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being in. And I know you've taken semi-retirement status, but I hope you'll still come back and be on the show.
I appreciate that.
And thank you for joining us on Inside Politics. Hope you'll be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.